Thank you for joining me today on Paint a Beautiful Picture. Today we're going to talk about a subject that really has had massive impact in the United States especially, but truthfully around the globe, and that is depression. What in the world is up with this? What about depression? All right, so let's talk about what depression is. Depression is either a physical, emotional, or spiritual state, or some combination of the above, that causes a person to lose energy, lose the joy of life, lose interest in pretty much anything in which they used to be interested, either makes them sleep all the time or unable to sleep, depending on what sort of depression it is or how severe it is, and basically makes a person really question, is life even worth it? Like, I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to deal with anybody. I don't want to deal with anything. I'm not even sure I want to keep breathing on the planet. Depression is very real. I have talked to some people. I think that Christians have gotten kind of a bad rap about this because certain loudmouth Christians, have done the whole, well, I don't really think that depression is a real thing and it's a spiritual problem. And if you loved God, you couldn't possibly be depressed. Whoa, okay. Let's just throw all that out as a bunch of junk because all of that is not real. Okay, so we'll talk about causes of depression. Women, not like you aren't well aware of this fact, but when your hormones change, and they change about 3 to 4 times a month, certain parts of that cycle make you prone to depression. That's just pure, outright physical hormonal depression. Might last for a day, it might last for 3. Lots of people deal with it. Okay? That's just one of the things that we have to handle as women. It's part of life. And we'll talk a great deal more about handling depression. Okay, so in other things that can throw you off chemically, I had a hysterectomy because I had cancer at 29 years old. And after I had that hysterectomy, I went into a severe physical depression, and it was from estrogen depletion. My body had had a high natural amount of estrogen, and they took out my ovaries, and suddenly I have no estrogen, basically. I went into a massive depression. It was totally physically induced. Though they were giving me hormone replacement therapy, it was not even 1/10 of what I needed, and it wasn't meeting my physical needs. And so I was in a depression, really, really horrible depression. Okay. They can happen because of circumstances. Okay. So I call this psychological depression. You live with a person who's physically abusive to you, but you have 3 little babies. It's not like you're going to be leaving or going somewhere soon, and your mom and dad will give you the whole, you made your bed and now you have to lie in it speech. And what in the world are you going to do? So you're living in this horrible situation. You see no way out of it. And truthfully, you don't see an end to it. And over time, it just wears you down psychologically. You're so depressed, you can't even see straight. You hardly can take care of the kids. You can't make a meal. You hand them a raw hot dog out of the package because you just have nothing to give. You're so severely depressed because of a situation. Sometimes people have an elderly parent who had a stroke or has a long-term illness, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and you just get so depressed. You're exhausted. You've been doing this for a couple of years already. So you're trying to deal with your teenagers and you're trying to deal with your elderly folks, and you have a job and you have responsibilities. You're just overwhelmed and you get depressed. What do you know? Okay. And certainly, without any question, there is spiritual depression where you know what you're supposed to be doing and you have a pretty strong understanding of what life should look like, and you're doing this whole other thing. I'm not even going to put descriptors on there because if you're one of these people, I don't have to explain it to you. You already know what you're doing and you already understand why that would be depressing. Because if you're opposing the God of the universe, yeah, over time, that's going to wear you down and wear you out. You're going to be depressed about some of the decisions that you've made or are making now. So, what in the world do you do about depression? Of course, if it's physical, you go get help. You tell the doctor the truth. It's amazing. I did an assessment because I was recently at a doctor's office, and nowadays it's very common to say, do you feel safe in your own home? In other words, people don't really want to walk in the door and say, yeah, my wife beats the living daylights out of me. But health professionals need to know if you're safe. They can actually help you, but you have to be willing to tell them. You have to be willing to tell someone that you're depressed, usually, before you're going to get any help for it. Your doctor is a good place to start. He or she can run some tests and find out if things are chemically out of balance with you and maybe help you get those things straight. And just, it might be as easy as changing your diet or taking some kind of hormonal therapy. It could actually be that you have an illness that nobody knows about, and they'll find it and they start dealing with you physically, and you feel better physically and emotionally and mentally. You start to feel better as well. So you got to deal with it. You got to tell someone. It's a little harder if it's an emotional depression, I admit, especially if you're dealing with your parents and you don't want to feel guilty about going to someone and go, I'm really depressed. Like, I should be glad to take care of my mom and dad. They took care of me. I don't have any reasons to be depressed. We psych ourselves out. We talk about stuff and we make it hard to admit the truth, but you've got to get help. Okay? The reason I'm addressing all of this in relationship to our own selves is if we've battled depression and we haven't done well with it, how in the world are we going to help our kids? And let me tell you, it's almost epidemic, the amount of depression that exists with teenagers. Do you know kids as young as 7 years old have committed suicide because of depression? I will never forget the first time I read that statistic and started looking at studies. Really, it just blew my mind so bad. And yet it's true. Teenagers kill themselves by the thousands every single day. And very often, parents say, I had no idea. And this is what I want you to know. If you have ever been depressed and you didn't deal with it, you're going to have a really difficult time dealing with your child's depression. So it's critical to look at your own life and be honest with your own self in order that you can deal with your child. Here's the opposite side of that coin. If you've never dealt with depression, but your teenager is, that also might be difficult for you. It might be difficult for you to relate to. And it might be very, very challenging to help them because it's out of your realm of experience. But you need to be paying attention. So let me tell you a couple of things. You have a young kid or a teenager, and they don't want to do their regular stuff anymore. They used to be so excited about going to horseback riding classes. Yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. They used to love to play the piano. They haven't touched that piano in 2 months. They used to always run around and hang out with their friends. They never leave their room. Those are signs of depression. They're either barely eating or they're overeating. All kinds of junk constantly. You have to be paying attention to your young person or your child and go, something changed. And you need to intervene. You've got to act on it. Don't leave it alone and go, oh, it's just a phase they're going through. Or, it's not that big of a deal. Everybody kind of goes a little off the track occasionally. Don't do that. Because honestly, it's very difficult. And truthfully, tomorrow we're going to talk about suicide. So I'm not going to go there very hard today. But what I want you to know is too often, depression will lead to suicide. If someone really gets to the place where they're so hopeless and they feel so helpless in dealing with what's going on, suicide seems like a viable answer, especially to a young person. So you've got to be paying attention. If your child is depressed, just like you would do for yourself, get them to a doctor. Allow them to have a physical exam to find out if there's anything physical going on with them. Take them to a counselor. If your teenager comes home the first 2 or 3 times, he goes, yeah, that was a waste of time, or that person's really stupid, or I don't know why I'm doing this, don't immediately go get a new counselor, because you're going to face a little resistance with teenagers, because they're not probably going to be wild and crazy about going to talk to somebody. I know, you just think I'm a nutcase. But I would say after 5 or 6 times, they're still doing the whole, this is not really doing me any good. Just like yourself. I said, go get a different counselor. Do that for your kid. If they're not having a good mix with the person they're talking to, it's not going to help them. And so don't be afraid to go talk to someone else. And especially with kids, they have all these questions, and they're great questions, and they are normal questions. Who am I? What am I here for? Is there really a God? especially as a Christian parent, you might find those kinds of things threatening, but you shouldn't. I can practically guarantee you that you had some of those questions as a kid or a teenager. Most normal people do. And so be willing to let them go talk to a pastor or counselor who's going to work through some of those things with them and address some of those things with them. And especially if a teenager has made life choices that you might not know anything about, because really they might not be talking to you about all this stuff, especially if they feel ashamed or guilty. You want them to have someone trustworthy that they can talk about it, who can help them understand what forgiveness from God is and what self-forgiveness is really about, and to process perhaps some choices that weren't the greatest that they might have made, but they're not permanent. They're not going to destroy their whole life or their eternity. And so help them get somebody around them and alongside of them that can help them process what's going on with them. And last of all, one of the most important things about this is address depression with your kids and tell them. Most people, I think the figures are around 80% now, will have some time in their life where they feel depressed. It's just a single episode. Depression really is something that comes to a lot of people. I've showed you this before. Like just before the holidays, November-ish, you're all excited and you're anticipating everything and you're going up and up and up. And here's Christmas and it's all awesome and you have presents and great meals and family and laughter. And then January comes. Oh my word. All the bills are coming due. Nothing's happening. You're in the doldrums of winter. You're going to go down. It's going to happen. Life has ups and downs for every human being. I have explained this so clearly to my children, and my one son, who is prone to depression, said he has shared this with thousands of people because it made such a difference for him to know about this. After you go up, you come down. Sometimes those down places take you lower than you thought they would go, and they lead to depression. When you already know in your mind, this is a normal cycle of life. I might have dipped down a little lower than I thought, but I will go back up again. Because that's really how it goes. So you have that hope even when you're really depressed. I will be going back up again because this is the way that life ebbs and flows. That gives them hope because most depressed people can't find any. So long before depression ever occurs, you can talk to your kids about the fact that life has an ebb and flow, and when you're in the downward part, or even if you go really far down and you get depressed, take hope. There's always the upward swing again. I want you to understand that you need to intentionally handle depression. You need to understand it and you need to look for it. So my challenge for you today is, have you ever been depressed? And do you know what to look for in a young person or a child to see if they're depressed and then be able to give them help? So I hope this has really been of use to you. I hope you understand the importance of it, and it has given you a few tools with which to handle the possibility of depression in yourself or in your children. It's been great having you with me today. I will look forward to seeing you again soon. You may find additional information on our paintabeautifulpicture.com website. Additionally, you may watch me on Rumble, and you may also listen to a podcast on Buzzsprout or Spreaker, all under the name Paint a Beautiful Picture. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. You may subscribe, and if you are interested in receiving notifications, please hit the notifications button.